Whoa.
The slab gave under my hands and the mask slipped free, clacking against wet earth, and something that was not a voice said, "Ivan." Curiosity pushed my fingers to the clay rim before I could think about catalog numbers or protocol. I felt curiosity sharpen into a decision. Lift the mask, see the surface, note the context. Two people moved toward the trench with headlamps already angled at me. The central problem was immediate. The object spoke to only me, and if I followed it, I would break procedure and break Maeve's trust. I am Evan Holt, 34, the lead field researcher assigned to the Northern Survey Grid. I carry a dog-eared field notebook and a headlamp that hangs from my jacket pocket. That night I wore canvas and coffee stains. The watch on my wrist had a cracked face, and the leather straps smelled of damp clay. We had been working remote coordinates for 10 days. The excavation had returned common shards and a length of ceramic with faint ochre, until this trench opened onto a compacted layer of compressed earth and bone. In the trench, I had pried at a stone slab and exposed a hollow shallow enough for something small and dangerous. Maeve was already at the trench lip when the mask first spoke. "Even hold it there," she said. Her voice was low and clipped. She kept her glasses pushed up on the bridge of her nose. I felt curiosity split into two currents. The clinical curiosity that catalogued with measured notes, and the other current that answered the mask in a private way. I stepped back, but did not let go. The mask sat in my palm. Its eye holes held dew and dark soil. The stitching of crabgrass across its cheek looked like a scar. "We secure and catalogue. Maeve, we done tea." She did not finish. The sound came again under the wind and the hush of the camp. A layered murmur, no louder than breath through teeth. It a direction, 3 numbers, and a cadence I had not heard before in any field report. The mask did not shout. It guided. Maeve reached, and I did not hand it over. I held the mask between thumb and forefinger so the paint would not flake off. My heart thudded under canvas and my palms smelled of clay and cold coffee. "Even, Maeve, this goes into a bag." Now her tone carried a command that expected compliance. I tightened my grip. The next sentence the mask shaped into syllables. "East by a stone, below a ridge, open the door." I mouthed the syllables. They matched a map notation I had seen earlier that day but dismissed. My curiosity had become insistence. I felt a small, nauseous pivot inside my chest. Doubt. Because Maeve's hand hovered like an order and the field vest at her hip held the proper catalogue tags. I could feel the first emotion shift. Curiosity to doubt. I heard instruments in the tent. Maeve's piece unit and the recorder ticking in the dark. You heard that. Maeve. She always used names in sentences so people could not deflect. "Even, did you hear that?" She crouched and presented her tablet screen. The spectral signature on her device fluttered in low bands I had seen only twice in 20 digs. The numbers blinked, and then a second instrument hummed with a weak, anomalous reading directly under our coordinates. The evidence moved the conversation off theory and into procedure. Dispute arranged itself in the quiet. "Catalogue versus action," I said. It gave coordinates. I tried to keep the words practical. I told her the numbers. I suggested we cross-check. My voice held steady because I had to keep Maeve from seeing the other change, that the mask's cadence fit a rhythm I remembered from a lullaby my grandmother hummed. I could not say that aloud without sounding insane. Curious hands had catalogued enough to know the difference between ancient rhythm and modern nonsense. But in my chest the second emotion shift, doubt to alarm, was forming in short, cold movements. My fingers trembled slightly when I wrote the coordinates into the notebook. Maeve did what Maeve always did. She controlled procedure. You bag it. I record it. We don't follow voices into the woods. She checked the mask for fractures and catalogue numbers. Her hands were practiced. She lifted the mask only by its edges and put it into a sealed evidence bag. Her fingertips left a fine trail of oil on the plastic. When she zipped the bag, the whispering dropped like a distant insect. The tent's generator clicked into a steady low drone. The mask's sound pulled taut but deferred. We argued. It was 3 quick rounds of back and forth, the kind of exchange that bends teams into 2 clear lines. Maeve, the coordinates match an old suppressed survey, I said. You saw the notations on grid 12. Even, you can see, we could find a buried structure. I cut in, we could document it. This needs to be confirmed now, Maeve answered with clipped practical language. We secure, we submit the report, we wait for the lab confirmation. We do not dig at 2A. The argument contained 6 quick exchanges, each under 15 words. The tension rose not from volume but from the tightness of the demands. Maeve stepped back from the trench and called for instruments. She sent someone to fetch the field archive cards. The camp stirred with low movement. Figures in tarps passed lanterns and muttered coordinates. An external event happened. A man from the perimeter returned with a rusted survey card in his hand, an old printed table that matched the mask's whisper and bore a redacted stamp. The arrival of that card pushed our dispute from academic to urgent. I felt vindicated and foolish in the same moment. A second person, Lena from conservation, handed Maeve an oxygen meter that flicked at low frequency. The instruments lined up like witnesses. In the tent we spread documents across the makeshift catalogue table. There was a tattered survey map with a corner missing, and a yellowed catalogue card whose ink had been rubbed away in parts. The card mentioned a buried structure and a team loss. The phrase was not poetic. It listed names and a last logged transmission that ended mid-sentence. Maeve's face went still as she read aloud the report lines. Her voice changed texture. It became flat with the weight of professional disbelief. They closed the entry. Maeve filed it as suppressed. Even, this is a closure. We do not reopen closed sites without authorization. She lifted her brass-rimmed glasses and rubbed at a mole near her temple. Someone may have died here before. Her gestures were small and measured, but they carried fear. I watched Maeve's escaloosed fingers slide across the catalogue cards and feel the training that anchored her. Her choice to obey rules presented itself as a physical action. Seal, log, report. I moved toward the woods before dawn. I had convinced Maeve to come with me by speaking in small practical terms. 1 quick survey. Cross, check the coordinate, then we go back and bag the rest. And by letting the curiosity in my voice sound like scientific responsibility. The mask had given us a direction, and the route cut through a ridge of spruce and oak above the campsite. We walked under lantern light, and the slow hiss of the generator grew distant. My shoulders tightened with the second emotion shift. Alarm began to slide toward resolve. The mask's murmur had altered me. I could feel its cadence under my ribs like a metronome. We reached the indicated clearing when the sky was leaning toward pale. The ground there had a ring of disturbed stone and a shallow depression half filled with scattered bone. Maeve crouched and ran her gloved hand over a carved edge. The stonework showed incisions that matched the mask's pattern. She found a second fragment of a mask half buried in the loam and held it up to the light. This is not ours, she said, not catalogued under the survey. Her tone had a brittle edge. The fragment's edges fit the mask I had in the bag like a missing puzzle piece. At that moment an instrument in our pack pinged, a low, steady harmonic that the recorder registered as out of band. The sound was not loud, but it vibrated through the shovel handles into our palms, an external event. The ground sounded a note. Maeve's breath shortened. She clapped a hand to her mouth. Even, she said, naming me the way she always did when a decision had to be made by another person. We should close it, she said quickly. We should cover it and file everything. We do not reopen this door. The phrase close it had weight. I looked at the slabs laid like a lid. One heavy stone lay centered over a carved threshold. The mask's voice rose clearer, as if the soil itself had begun to shape the sound. It move, push open. I had my hands on the slab before Maeve could stop me. I pushed with both shoulders and felt the stone shift with a grind that sent flakes of chalky soil across my knees. Maeve grabbed my jacket sleeve. Even, stop. Maeve, I did not listen. The mask folded inside my jacket under the bag. I had a fragment tucked under my palm. When the slab tipped, a gap released, and a breath of stale air poured up like something exhaled after a long sleep. The layered whispering that poured from the opening filled my head in a way that made my teeth ache. For a moment I had only the mask's direction and a tidal sense of inevitability. Maeve tried to pull me back. "Even, get away from the edge!" She grabbed my arm and her fingers were collused and hard, dragging me. For 3 frantic lines we argued in short bursts. Maeve, listen. No, even the coordinates matched. "Even, stop!" The exchange landed with the force of bodies. She hauled me off the threshold. The mask sound swelled, as if annoyed that we interfered with its work. The slab's movement revealed a dark throat of carved stone that dropped into blackness. Something inside breathed cold and dry, smelling of old iron and a mineral salt. And the whispering resolved into a cadence that was not speech but a series of repeating instructions. My hands shook. My breath came in sharp, clipped pulls. The 3rd external event in the chapter occurred. A brittle field report folded and pinned to the stone edge by a rusted nail. The paper unfurled in Maeve's flashlight beam. It bore the word abandoned and a list of names, including one I recognized from a suppressive file. Team Kavanav log terminated. Maeve read the names. She looked up at me and her pupils were small and hard even, she said, and the name in her mouth was a command and an accusation. "Why did you push?" The question landed between us and the ruined doorway. My answer came in a single action. I shoved the fragment I had hidden into the pocket of my field jacket. The movement was private and fast. Something in the camp registered that small theft as a turning point. For a stretch the world narrowed to the slab and the opening. We both stood breathing in the doorway, a smell of stale earth and old resin. Maeve's voice had shifted again. The practical skepticism she wielded had become fear, and then a cold calculation. "We rebury it," she said. "We seal this. Catalogue. File the report. We stay away." The second emotion shift completed. Alarm moved to resignation, and then to a form of enforcement in Maeve. She picked up a shovel and began to heap dirt back onto the slab. I wanted the doorway open. The mask's pull gnawed under my ribs. It me names, locations, timing. It instructed me in short, ordered sentences that fit like well-cut tools for the ruin. I reached for the stone again. The whispering rose to a layered chorus, and for an instant I heard multiple tones at once, like voices pressed close together. I put both hands on the edge, but Maeve's shovel struck my palm. Her action was loud and decisive. She gripped my wrist and twisted so the slug of earth slid from her tool into the hole. We argued again, 3 short lines that did not calm. "Maeve, you don't understand. Even, you are not in charge here." The mask stopped saying that name. The exchange finished with Maeve standing over the slab and me cursing under my breath. I pulled my jacket closed so the fragment would not clink against fabric. A sudden external event arrived. A faint, metallic scraping from below the threshold, as if something within the ruin had shifted in response to our interference. The scrape changed the rhythms of our movements. Maeve checked the catalogue and took out a sealed report she had prepared earlier in the night. She began to write into the field log with a pen that scratched in short, precise strokes. Her handwriting was tidy and controlled. Every measure she took aimed to transfer the decision into a bureaucratic record. I watched her write names, times, details. She redacted a line, then circled the coordinates. Her hands did not stop. The act of documentation was a contact point between us. She created a paper boundary while I felt the pull to cross it. A sudden sound came from behind the slabs, a sound like dry bone against stone. I stepped forward, and then something that was not voice but pressure pressed at the base of my skull. Maeve's hand tightened on the pen until the knuckles whitened. She looked at me and then at the hole. "Even, leave it closed," she said. She did not smile. Her voice had the precise, low tone she used when correcting procedure in front of students, or when ordering the team to follow a protocol. The language of authority held no warmth. Against her will I lifted a small clod of earth and set it aside. The mask whispered a directive more urgent than before. Retrieve the report, read the line, say the name. I felt compelled to obey. The compulsion across my chest flared. My mouth went dry. I reached into my jacket, fingers brushing the fragment I'd hidden there. Mavis' shout cut across the clearing like a stopwatch. Even, stop. She reached for me again. I pulled the fragment out and held it up. It fit against the cracked rim of the first mask. The two halves matched in a way that made everything in my body tremble. The whispering changed cadence and made small, consonant sounds that matched syllables etched into the stone. It was not a voice with malice. It was patient and indifferent. It wanted a door to be opened and a place to be returned. Maeve's breath caught. She reached for the pieces and then withdrew her hand. The climax moved with the speed of a decision made inside a muscle. I shoved my shoulder into the slab and felt it tilt. The mask's chorus swelled into a roar of layered murmurs that filled my ears. Maeve grabbed my collar and tried to pull me off. Her voice cut and quick. "Even get away from the edge!" I answered with a shove and a word. No, the exchange was short and violent. 3 back and fourths of name and command. The slab tipped further and the threshold opened wider. A rush of stale air exhaled from the opening, carrying with it a smell of iron and salt. The sound inside was not silence. It was a low, multi-tonal hum that pressed against our bones. Light from the camp lanterns pooled at the lip of the doorway and revealed a narrow passage that dropped into blackness. Something small and motionless lay against the carved step, a bone pendant threaded on a rotted cord. The pendant matched the pattern on the mask's chin. Maeve hauled me back and we both stumbled away from the threshold. She grabbed a shovel and threw earth back against the stone edge. For a long beat we worked in rapid movements, shovelfuls of dirt slamming down as if to smother the sound. The mask's whispering did not stop. It receded but left a residue of cadence in my ears. A new external event, a thin, torn field report fluttered out of the dark and landed at Maeve's boot. She stooped and read a line and muttered a name we both recognized. Her face hardened. We reburied the mask in a shallow pit on a ridge above the ruined doorway and tamped the soil with our boots. Maeve filed a terse field report in which she redacted details and marked the site closed. She sealed the evidence bag and placed it in the camp's locked container. Then she turned to me with a look that held disbelief and something like exhaustion. "You kept a fragment," she said. Her voice contained accusation and something that had been stripped of patience. I did not answer with words. I had the fragment against my chest inside the jacket. It felt warm from my body heat and heavier than its size warranted. My hands were smudged with clay. My mouth tasted of iron. Maeve recorded the times and wrote down our activities with short, clipped sentences. She signed the report and slid it into the field archive. Then she spoke in the tone she used to close sessions. "We will not speak of this beyond the team. We file, we close, we do not reopen. Do you understand, Ivan?" Her hands were steady. Her authority left me without immediate recourse. I nodded. I felt the third emotion shift, from resolve toward a guilty, stubborn defiance. I had obeyed the burial, but I had not returned the fragment. Later, in the field tent, while the camp packed and the sky brightened to a washed gray, Maeve prepared a redacted report and slid it into an envelope stamped with suppression codes. She the team to keep to normal rotations and not to discuss the details outside the camp. Her actions created a paper firewall. After Maeve left the tent, I sat with my headlamp dimmed and my notebook open. I wrote the sequence of events in short, clinical lines. Time slab moved, coordinates verified, fragment taken. I did not write about why the mask named me. I did not write about the way the whisper synced to my heartbeat. I tore off the page and slid it into the back of my pack where it would be unlikely to be found. Outside, someone hammered a tin cup and started the generator. The camp moved like a small machine, efficient and indifferent. Liner padded past the tent and did not look inside. Maeve's shadow crossed the canvas briefly and then was gone. I folded the fragment in a scrap of cloth and slipped it into the inner pocket of my jacket. The action was private. The mask's murmur had not quieted entirely. It threaded through the static of the recorder left running on the table. Before I slept for a short shifting hour, I heard the recorder sputter with static and a faint cadence that sounded like counting. I did not turn it off. In the low light of the tent, I traced the mask's carved incisions on my palm by touch. The fragment's surface had hairline fractures filled with soil and a trace of ochre that caught the lamp. The last external event of the chapter occurred when a knock sounded on the tent flap. I opened a slit and Maeve stood there, coat buttoned against the chill, her face set. In her hand she held a small, stamped envelope. She did not smile even, she said, and the name in her mouth carried a professional finality. You put that in the packet before we leave. Now the demand was practical and immediate. I slid the fragment into the envelope and then into the sealed container with the rest of the field evidence. Maeve closed the latch and wrote our signatures with the pen that scratched in narrow, exact lines. The final paragraph of the night was not a reflection. It was a concrete beat. Maeve stamped the report closed and handed me a catalogue card that she had blacked out in places. I tucked the card into my notebook. The mask's whispering settled into a low, patient hum in the recorder left on the table, and the generator kept time. In the morning, the team would process the sealed materials, and the archive would gain another redacted file. I lay back on the cot and reached into my inner pocket, fingers closing on something small and hard, an impossible comfort, and a proof of my own decision. I did not place it back in the sealed container outside the flap. The campsite continued its ordinary noises, Pot's voices, and the distant scrape of metal on stone. Inside, the recorder faintly repeated a cadence that I could no longer tell belonged to the mask or to memory. The chapter ends with Maeve walking away to the catalogue table, the sealed envelope heavy in her hands, and me standing in the tent with mud on my boots and a paper card in my notebook that had a single redacted line circled. The mask was buried. The doorway had been opened and then closed. We had a field report stamped closed. The choice had been made and recorded. The fragment lay hidden on my person. That decision hung in the dirt under my nails and in the folded lines of the report. It changed nothing outwardly. It changed everything internally in the way a hidden object changes the fit of a jacket. Outside, the ridge swallowed the shallow mound we had tamped down. Inside, the whispering kept time with my breath, patient and waiting. My gloved fingers found the carved lip before my headlamp did, and the stone moved under my hand. Dirt tumbled into the hollow like teeth. Curiosity pushed me forward even as a pulse of doubt tightened my jaw. I kept scraping with the trowel because the shape fit a pattern I had seen on old field maps. Curiosity is the feeling that put me at the ridge at dawn, and it is the feeling that led me to keep working when Maeve shouted my name. When the crusted slab finally gave and the mask clacked against wet soil, I had already decided, without asking permission, to follow whatever line of instruction it offered. I should say at once that my choice was not blind. I had catalogued ritual fragments for 10 years. I can read pottery sherd profiles in the dark. I know how to record a context number and tape a sample bag. Curiosity made me take the extra step, lift the object, check the surface, touch the incisions. And the habit of my training made me check everything about the find as if cataloging might keep whatever it was accountable. Maeve burst from the tent with her satchel banging against her hip and light from the lantern knocking the canvas into a weak golden square. "Evan, stop," she said. Her voice carried the authority of 30 years of permits and paperwork. That line, Maeve's order, pulled the problem into focus within the first moments. The mask wanted the doorway opened and professional protocol demanded containment. I did not answer with words right away. I wiped soil from the mask's rim with a thumb and watched the carved mouth where ochre had once been. The mask whispered then, the sound a gravel, threaded murmur at the edge of hearing, and it had begun to give instructions in a cadence that matched the heartbeat, bass from our small speaker. Curiosity moved into compulsion. I felt the shift like a knot tightening across the front of my shirt. Yvonne, drop it now, Maeve, stepping closer. Hands a fraction higher than mine as if she intended to catch the object without touching my fingers. Even we log, we bag, we seal. You know the chain. Her words were short, precise. Maeve, listen, I tried to explain while keeping my hand under the rim. The mask was warm from being under the earth. The fractures held damp soil in their hairlines. It knows the coordinates. It says how to move the slab. I forced my voice low. I felt the compulsion change my breathing. Maeve's eyes narrowed. Even Holt, drop it. Now her tone clipped and final. She reached for my wrist. We struggled over the mask for the space of one breath, then two. My hand tightened. Hers pressed from the opposite side. The mask's whisper rose into a string of exact words: north, lever, push, and those words felt like instructions read from a field manual. For a moment my actions split. The training in my bones wanted to hand it over and seal the find. Something else wanted the passage opened at once. That split was my first emotion shift. Curiosity giving way to doubt. My fingers flexed and slackened. I let Maeve draw the mask half out of my grip so she could inspect the face. She looked past the eye holes and found a rubbed glyph at the doorway rim. Her breath caught. Where did you? She began and stopped. The line on the doorway matched the symbol inked into a redacted note I had once seen in a file Maeve kept in her satchel. A small folded catalogue card she never allowed me to scan. I had not believed the rumor that she carried a hidden case file. Seeing the glyph made doubt shift again into a raw, practical fear. Maeve, I said, this matches your note. You kept that file. I could hear the accusation in my own voice and the way it pushed her back toward action. She did not deny it. I kept it because I thought it was a misattribution, she said. But this line here. She tapped the carved groove where the glyph had been rubbed smooth by time. This is the sealed entry from the Western Survey. It should be here on our grid. An external fact arrived then, the site aligned with a redacted entry. That was the unexpected corroboration from the beat list. The moment Maeve's skepticism fractured. She stepped from restrainer to reluctant ally in the span of 2 short moves. Her hands went to the field satchel, pulled out a stiff leather tag, and thumbed the corners where catalog numbers used to be. If this matches, Maeve, we have a biological artifact on a location that's not on record. This is not procedural even. This is classified. She slid a hand under the mask and did not let go. The mask hummed at the contact with Maeve's palm and then did something else. It spoke directly to me in a tight chorus. The voice layered, not loud but urgent in pitch. Push the final stone. Leverage the lip. Follow the stair. The words were commands, and they shadowed the list of tools I had already arranged beside the opened trench. I felt my hands move toward the lever bars on their own. My mouth worked. I heard Maeve say, "Do not," and then I heard her list the practical risks of opening a sealed ruin. Her sentences were mechanical. Exposure to unknown pathogens, destabilizing a protected context, the legal weight of unauthorized excavation. Each point stabbed at the choice I was about to make. We argued in quick lines that snapped back and forth like trowels against stone. Even, we report this and wait. Maeve insisted, we call the Institute. We secure the perimeter. Maeve, if we leave it, we lose the context. I said, if I done to see down there, someone else will come and rip it open poorly. My voice went higher than I intended. You think your seeing is better than procedure. Even this is not about you. Maeve's reply was flat and sharp. I know the stratigraphy. Maeve, I know how to record a descent. Let me. I reached for the lever bars. No, she planted both feet and put her shoulder into my chest. No, that was her second no in one breath. and for the first time since the mask unclasped, I saw fear cross her face, not the theoretical academic fear of paperwork, but an instinct to stop harm. The team tightened around us. 2 grad students emerged from canvas doors, blinking at the lantern light, and the student with the tripod ran a cable from the camera to the small recorder. Names were called out: Lina, Jonas, and those names dragged the scene into procedure, even as the mask pushed back. I felt another emotion shift. Doubt sliding into fear. My hand shook while I jammed the crowbar into the final seam. The mask murmured the exact wrist motion required. I told myself I was following catalog logic, and that the mask's instructions were a salvageable method. Maeve's breath was near my ear. "We'd do this together," she said, and the phrasing mattered. It made the decision joint. She handed me a length of tether and tied it to my belt. We levered the last slab. It gave with a small, sharp sound, not the slow yielding I had expected, but a clean break like a rib splitting. A stale breath exhaled from the void, something metallic in it, and a thin film of dust puffed into the dawn. The mask's whisper turned into layered unison, and then into something that felt like a pressure against my face. For the climax beat, as the outline demanded, the release was immediate and physical. A pressure moved across the threshold and struck Maeve with the force of a glancing elbow. She stumbled, her shoulder smashing against the tent pole. She cursed and went down hard into the canvas. The tether that I had thought would keep me steady snagged on a packed stone and jerked my hip forward, pinning me half inside the opening and half out on the ridge. "Maeve!" I shouted, but sound lost shape in the mouth of the ruin. The inside drank my voice. There was a sound like wet paper being folded and a scraping from deep beneath that had no clear source. The grad students shouted behind me. Their words collided with the hollow noise and fell apart. I remember the immediate fallout as a series of concrete failures. Maeve's satchel spilled cards. The headlamp bounced and dented the rim of the trench. Jonas dropped the camera bag and the tripod legs stuck in the cleared earth, making a small chaotic geometry. My watch face had a crack running across it now where stone had struck during the jerk. Blood slicked Maeve's forearm, where something had nicked her on the way down. Maeve cuffed, tasting metal even. "Back up," she said, and the command sounded hoarse. She brought her good hand to her wrist and found a shallow cut. Her usual calm fractured into something raw and angry. "We should seal it," the Lina, voice small and urgent. She was already fumbling for sterile gauze. "No," I said, "we document it. We descend a measured meter." The words came out deliberate because I needed them to be deliberate. Maeve's eyes searched my face and then went to the mask where it lay half in a shallow canvas bag, its empty eye holes pointing at the sky. "You hear it also," she said. "You hear the direction in it. This is not just suggestion, Ivan. It is pushing." Her tone was the precise, constrained sound of someone who had made a hard decision. Maeve's injury demanded a choice someone else could make. She wanted to classify and move the site into evidence custody. I wanted to know what lay at the top of the steps. The mask had given us a directive, and the ruin had responded. That sequence changed the balance of authority. Maeve saw the glyph and the file and chose to trust the record rather than follow instinct alone. She surprised me by helping me lower a lamp on a long pole and handing the tether back. I tightened the knot at my belt and felt the leather strap under my thumb. The mask's voice had not stopped. It spoke of a worn stone at the third step and of a carved valve. It spoke of a name, one I recognized from a catalog card Maeve had once shown me as a hypothetical, a Rutal, and hearing that name shifted everything. The twist came when Maeve swallowed that name and did not protest. Instead she said, "A Rutal is what my file calls it, yes. It was redacted because of sponsors. If that's what this is, we have a responsibility to handle it carefully." Hearing Maeve speak the specific name changed my understanding of an earlier event, the moment the mask had clacked free. Until she said the catalog name aloud, I had treated the mask's intelligence as a local nuisance. With that name connecting the object to a known, redacted element, the object became part of an institutional secret, rather than just a field oddity. That reveal forced the next choice: follow procedure or follow the ruin's instructions. We descended 3 steps together on ropes and hands. The light narrowed with each foot and seemed to be consumed by carved stone. I kept my headlamp steady while Maeve recorded the profile on the tablet. Her commentary moved from clipped phrases, depth 212 centimeters, to practical orders like bandage, stabilize, photograph. Her voice was professional, but her fingers moved with a rush I had not seen. That rush felt like agreement. At the 3rd step, the mask's voice rose to a chorus and then quieted into a single sharp directive: find the valve. I knelt on the worn tread and felt the carved grooves with gloved fingertips. There was a raised ridge, a place where someone had ground the stone to make a lever. I passed my hand along the groove until I found an indentation the size of a thumb. Here, I said. I pressed. The stone answered with a click that traveled through my wrist and up my arm like a small impact. The stair exhaled another dry breath, and for the first time, a sound from the dark unambiguously mimicked a human sigh. It was not wind. Then something in the darkness shifted and was not there anymore. The step I had touched had been solid one moment and then produced an empty space where my hand had been. I tried to reach and my fingers met carved air. The sudden absence was a physical loss. It had mass where there should have been mass, and then it did not. The cliffhanger came when I lost the sense that the void contained reachable things. I leaned forward, and the tether caught me by the belt. My stomach dropped. Even tether? Maeve called, sharp. I fumbled the knot with one hand while the other reached in where stone had been and found only chilled air. I yanked back and found nothing in my hand. The mask's voice folded into static, then into a slow coaxing, bring light. Bring the mouth, the grad students shouted behind me. The recorder was still running and making a shallow, high, kept whine through the speaker. The outside world felt sudden and loud in a way that had nothing to do with volume. Tent flaps snapping, boots on packed dirt, Maeve saying my name 3 times. We set a plan in 5 short decisions that moved the plot outward and upward. Maeve insisted we apply a field seal to the rim, and to tag the find as temporarily unsecure. Jonas ran the record, Lena took photos. I crawled down 1 meter farther to where the carved steps descended in a choking funnel. We agreed to take 1 photograph deeper in, and then close the opening until we had institutional clearance. Each decision tried to limit harm. The mask made a sound like a laugh, and then it spoke 1 last precise phrase. Bury, return the top, leave the marker. The instruction came as if from a site steward. The words contained a specific plan. Reseal and mark. Maeve looked at me while holding gauze to her wound. She put her palm over the brand on her wrist. The metal smell of blood was fresh, even. We have to seal this. We document, we log what we saw. We make the institute the first call. I thought of the mask's earlier coaxing, and the way the ruin had responded when the stone moved. I thought of Maeve's file and of the redaction that had hidden this coordinate. I measured the legal and ethical weight of both paths. Then I felt the mask against my ribs where it lay in the bag, and I felt, physically, the insistence it carried. My hands moved in a way that had little to do with conscience and more to do with muscle memory. We did what Maeve requested on paper. We bagged soil samples. We photographed profiles from 2 angles and we logged context numbers. We set tags. We wrote notes and folded them into the leather satchel. Maeve spoke names, permit numbers, the date, the approximate horizon. Her voice steadied as she read those things because she knew the language of control. But at the end of the process, when the tape ran and the grad students packed their gear into the van, when the camera battery needed exchange and the recorder beeped low, we stood with the mask between us and made a decision that was not on any form. If we tell them everything, I said, they'll seal it and never come back. If they come themselves, They will bring machines and people who want to care for it like we do. They'll break it to get answers. I said it fast and hard, the way you say a confession. Maeve's jaw tightened. Or they will secure it and prevent harm, she answered. Her tone held the field seam, profession versus whatever else we were feeling. I told her how the mask had directed me to a specific stone and how the steps had reacted by losing mass. I told her how its cadence had matched a pulse in the speaker. I did not say the whole truth about the voice, how it sounded sometimes like several people pushing the same sentence at once, because saying that would make me sound insane. Even Maeve, after a long pause, you can be reckless. I've seen you pry a context open when there were easier notes to take. But I also know you catalog because you care. If you bury it where no one will find it and mark the ridge with a discreet flag and write a sealed note that I will sign, then we will have controlled the risk. We'll also be responsible for an intentional misfile. She looked at me hard. Are you proposing we lie on a report? Her question landed like a physical weight. The moral choice offered was concrete and immediate. I could hand the mask over and write the legal truth. I could follow the mask's whisper and bury it. Or I could tell the Institute everything and force them to choose. I made the choice in a set of specific actions. I took the mask in both hands and felt the weight of its ceramic. It had hairline fractures filled with soil. A rim rubbed smooth, faint traces of ochre. I put it into my pack. I unfastened the tether and looped the rope around a lug. I picked up a small field flag and showed it to Maeve. We will mark the ridge with this.